Okay. Mic check 1 2 1 2. I am the Y2K Collector, and I'm here to share with you the 3 reasons why I immediately failed my $10 video game collection challenge. For those of you who follow the channel, you will know that not too long ago I embarked on a video game challenge where I was basically going to be using some of the scraps from my video game collection to start a fund that I would use to buy video games that I would then add to my collection. And the whole premise was going to be the same premise that you've been hearing on YouTube for the last 3 to 4 years, where you buy a bunch of games, you sell some so that you're able to keep the games that you want for free. Now, this was a formula that was extremely effective, I want to say, before the pandemic, and especially during the pandemic, when the prices for retro games were just incredibly inflated and there was just a huge imbalance in the market. I think that a lot of people who had video games or were even selling video games were doing their best to keep up with the rapid changes in prices and value. You saw game stores like GameStop, who weren't aware, still selling really valuable PS3 and 360 games for really cheap, because GameStop, I think they were the last to get on the retro wave, because it wasn't until maybe about the last year or so that they really started pushing their retro games. But I want to say during the height of the pandemic, like at the start and going through it, you saw a lot of mom and pop retro game stores try to keep up. And I would see where you would have retro game stores who would have video games priced, let's say the game was priced at $20. If the price charting value had shot up in the last 3 months and the game was now $40, you would see people in retro game stores arguing with game store owners because the price tag would say 20, but then they'd be trying to charge you 40 and 50. And so this was going on a lot during the pandemic. I saw a lot of videos where, retro game stores, yard sales, a lot of people were just, delusional about, how much they thought they should have been getting for their game collections. And this impacted the retro community as a whole. Not only did it impact resellers, but it also impacted collectors. And I think now, here at the end of 2023, I think we're finally starting to see a balance in the market. I don't think the market's necessarily crashed, and that video game values as a whole have dropped and fallen off a cliff. But I think that overall the prices and values are starting to balance out and are starting to get a little more accurate, right? This is my thought on retro gaming, and then I'll get into my 3 reasons why. Ultimately, a video game is really only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. So when you buy a video game, even if I go out today and I find I don't know, Chibi Robo or a very valuable GameCube game. Let's say I find, Earthbound. If I go out today and I find a complete in box copy of Earthbound, I can make a video this afternoon and say, hey guys, I found a complete in box Earthbound and now I have a budget of $1,000 once I sell it. But the reality is that Earthbound is only going to be worth what someone's actually willing to pay for it. And what we're starting to see is that folks, the willingness of folks to pay these high prices has dropped dramatically. And so I think we're looking at values for video games that are still 2 years behind, and they don't accurately reflect what people today would be willing to pay for video games. And so that's really going to kind of start leading me into the first reason why I immediately failed with my retro game collection challenge. And the first reason is location. I am not in a part of the country where picking up retro games is easy. I am in New York, and when you're in New York, I actually recently saw a video between Phoenix Resale and Sid Cooper. Phoenix Resale, everyone knows who Phoenix Resale is. He's probably the most prominent reseller on YouTube. And Sid Cooper is a retro game store owner. He owns a retro game store, I think, in the Pacific Northwest. And Phoenix Resale asked him, he said, hey, where in the country do you find the most expensive retro games? And Sid Cooper confirmed that based on his travels and what he'd seen, he confirmed that New York is the most expensive place to source retro games. And so because of that, I personally already start my challenge off at a massive disadvantage, right? Because the odds of me being able to find retro games, or even just find games, period, and buy them at a price point that would allow enough profit margin to cover the games that I actually want is slim to none. It's probably going to be really difficult for me to do that, just based on where I'm located. And if you know anything about New York, especially New York City, New York is one of the most expensive places to live on the planet, period. Everything is expensive here. Housing, food. I think California has us beat when it comes to gas. But where they beat us in gas, we definitely beat them in the cost for public transportation. Our public transportation costs are constantly going up, tolls, bridges, the whole 9 yards, right? So New York is just an expensive place in general. And when you're trying to get into an expensive hobby like video game collecting, reselling just isn't an option here. On top of that, New Yorkers are hustlers, so New Yorkers are very price conscious, and we typically know what the values are for things. And so it's going to be very hard to pull the wool over a New Yorker's eyes. Like, you're not going to go on Facebook Marketplace anywhere in the tri-state area and be able to find someone who's posting their entire retro game collection for free, like I see on some of these channels. I mean, listen, if you're able to find a deal like that, man, amazing. I'd make 5 videos on that, period. Like, if I was able to find some of the deals I see, I'd make 3 videos just on that one deal. But unfortunately, in this part of the country, just the location is really what kills me. And that kind of leads me into reason number 2. The second reason why I, failed immediately at my game collection is because it's impossible to source product here. And this is kind of like almost an extension of the first reason. So because I'm in New York, sourcing product is very difficult. Finding games that I can sell, finding games at a cheap enough price that I can actually collect at this stage of the game is really hard, because while the rest of the country has realized that game prices are coming down, New Yorkers unfortunately don't realize that. So it's really hard to source product, right? I can't go to my local retro game stores because they're too expensive. Heck, I can't even go to my local Goodwill. Like, I don't even go to Goodwill anymore, because one of the last times I went to Goodwill, they had a copy of Silent Hill 2 for $100 at Goodwill. They were trying to sell a Wii with, like, I want to say 10 games, and like 5 of those games were like Dance Dance Revolution. Maybe one of them was Super Mario Galaxy. Maybe one was like a Pac-Man game. They tried to sell that bundle for $140. So sourcing product here is very difficult. And then you might say, well, why 2K Collector? Why don't you just leave the state? Why don't you just go to another part of the country, go on a road trip? Well, time is a time factor for me, right? So for me, I do not have the time to surf Facebook Marketplace, for extended periods of time, nor do I have the time to drive, 30, 40, 50 miles just for one deal. I don't have the time for it. And when I look at the time value, it really, in most cases, wouldn't be worth my time to do something like that. Like, for instance, if I was able to drive 50 miles to pick up a video game lot that was able to get me, I don't know, $200 in profit, it still wouldn't be worth my time. When you factor the time it's going to take me to drive there, drive back, plus the gas, it just doesn't net to a positive in my situation. So it doesn't make sense for me to leave the state, drive anywhere far to pick up a video game lot, unless it was a deal where it was like $20,000 or $25,000 worth of video games that someone was selling me for 10 or 8 or 7. Then that is something that I would do. But even then, that's something that I would probably turn into a full-on trip. I wouldn't just drive there to buy the games. I might make a trip out of it. We might go to the location, get a hotel, the whole 9 yards. So I say all that to say that sourcing right now for me is a near impossibility due to just games not even being available, and then just not having the time to actually go out and source games the way I want to source them. It's just really, really difficult to do here in the big city. Okay, and now that takes me to the third reason why, and I kind of touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but the third reason why I immediately failed is because we are in a declining retro video game market. Now, I've had some folks comment on some of my other videos when I've mentioned this before, and a few folks have said, hey, listen, there's no crash, I'm still selling video games at full price. I'm still selling Suikoden 2 for $250, or I'm still selling Conker's Bad Fur Day for $150. And if you are able to still get top dollar for the video games that you're selling, my hat's off to you. Congratulations. You're a great reseller. You're great at business, the whole 9 yards. The reality for most, though, is that we are in a declining retro video game market. For most games that folks will want to go out and buy, they're not as expensive as they once were. And even when it comes to some of the higher price stuff, even the higher price stuff isn't as expensive as it once was. I look at some of the games that I've been, trying to get. When I look at a game like, for instance, Troubleshooter on the Sega Genesis is a classic side-scrolling shooter. At the height of the pandemic, that was a $500 game. To get it complete in box, Troubleshooter, that was about $500. Now Troubleshooter struggles to sell for, $350. I've seen that. Now, doesn't mean that you're not going to go online and see it sell for $380 or maybe $390, maybe even $400. But Troubleshooter is not as expensive as it once was. Another game, this is a game I actually have in my collection, The Punisher, right? The Punisher, the side-scrolling beat 'em up on the Sega Genesis, that complete in box at one point was $600 or so. That's taking a dip. You want to move away from the Genesis? Let's look at Super Nintendo. A year ago, a complete in box copy of Demon's Crest would have ran you maybe $500. Now you can get a complete in box copy of Demon's Crest for about $400. So the market has not crashed completely. Video game prices have not gone all the way down into the toilet, but it is becoming difficult to resell games when their prices are going down. It's a lot easier to resell video games when the prices are on the incline or on the increase, because you're going to get more. That there's going to be someone who's willing to pay more for those games. Unfortunately, those times are behind us. So for the purposes of reselling, buying video games today don't make sense. If you're going to try and resell video games, unless you're able to source them in bulk, like the way Phoenix Resale does when he buys his huge lots and he pays, anywhere between 30 and 40% for everything on average. If you can do that, then that's great for sure. I mean, you're killing it. You're probably going to do as well as Phoenix Resale does. But the odds are that most folks are not going to be in a position to do that, because if Phoenix Resale does not source, and this video isn't about him, but I just use him because he is a prime example of someone who's been able to not only build a collection, but also build a reselling business, using a method that I don't think works anymore. I don't think the Phoenix Resale method works anymore. Believe it or not, a lot of the YouTubers who are killing the game and, still making money. They're making a lot of their money from their actual YouTube channels because they were smart. They documented their game collecting journeys, they documented their game hunting, and they were able to turn game hunting itself into a stream of revenue via YouTube. So when you have checks coming in from YouTube, it makes it easier for you to buy lots in bulk. It's a lot harder for you to take $20,000 that you had to earn by working a job and buying a $20,000 or $30,000 game lot. As opposed to if you got a YouTube check cut to you for 10 grand and you go on Facebook Marketplace and you see someone selling all of their childhood games for 10 grand, then you can go and buy it. Sure. And I think for someone who's trying to resell now, you really need to be in a space where you're able to source product for less than 50% of market value. If you can't get your games, if you can't get your product or your items for less than 50%, it's probably not going to be worth your time once you factor in the cost and expense to actually sell it and flip it, because there are costs associated with that. And that does it. That does it in terms of the 3 reasons why I immediately failed my video game collection challenge. So what do I do now? What do I do now that I've realized that I cannot engage in this reselling? Well, one of the first things I'm doing is I'm going to quit reselling. I'm not going to try to do this game collection challenge, because doing a game collection challenge involves you being a reseller. And right now, being a reseller of video games just isn't a very fun or easy thing. I'll reference another YouTuber, Cody with the K. He's someone that I've watched for a while. Really like him. I think his videos are great. They're packed with a ton of energy. If I'm low energy, I can watch one of Cody with the K's videos and I will get all my energy back. But even in his last video, because right now he's running a $10,000 game collection challenge. He's trying to build a $10,000 game collection from zero, right? Without spending any money, by just reselling video games that he's able to pick up via trades, by trading in Xbox One S's or, OLED switches. He buys those, he trades those for entire video game lots, and then he sells off portions of the lots to cover the games that he's going to keep. And in his last video, he mentioned how difficult it was to move some of the product that he got in his last lot. And if you go and watch, his last couple videos, he actually has heat. He's not trying to sell Madden 95. He's selling GameCube games, N64 games, good games, but finding folks who are willing to buy the games at the prices that will make sense for him, right? That will allow him to recoup and profit to be able to build his collection. Even he is running into challenges. So what I plan on doing is I plan on sticking to the collecting side of things. If I am able to find a game at a really cheap price and resell it and get some profit, of course I'm going to do it. I'm not an idiot, but that is not going to be my method of attack when it comes to building my game collection. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to do, but I do have a box full of items to sell. I have not sold the things that I have yet, so I do plan on doing that. And I do plan on engaging in trades to build my collection. I had a commenter ask me on one of my videos. They said, "You have a lot of games. How do you afford it?" I've actually been able to afford a lot of it via trades. 2023 has been marked by nothing but trades. I spent this entire year trading away all of my 30 and under games. So I had in my collection, I probably had about 800 games that were worth $30 and under. And I'm just using the price point because it's an easy identifier. Instead of saying retro, role-playing games or action games, I just had about 800 games worth $30 or under. And I wound up selling and trading those games away over the last year and a half. And the money that I got from selling and trading those games away is what allowed me to pick up some of the more higher end items in my current collection, like my Neo Geo AES, Magician Lord. I have a complete in box GameCube. Just some of the higher dollar items I was able to get via trades, through trades. So that's how I was able to do a lot of it. Also, another question that I got was about playing a lot of my games, because a lot of them are sealed. My Nintendo Switch collection is sealed. A lot of the games in that collection are sealed, but also a lot of those games I did download and played the download version to keep my one copy sealed. So I do have a huge Switch backlog. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Switch games in my collection that I haven't played, but I have played a lot of my Switch collection, and I will be getting into that a little bit more in the future. But for now, I think I'm going to focus more so on just continuing to curate my collection. I may scale it down a little bit more. I may sell more games that I'm not super into to just to keep the train going, keep the collection train going. But overall, the reselling aspect of it, buying and selling, to me, it's not worth my time. But let me know what you think. Do you think it's still worth it to try and resell retro games? Are you finding a market for it? Are the games you're trying to sell moving fast or slow? Let me know down in the comments. I got rid of a lot of my commons last year and the beginning of this year because I knew it would become very difficult to sell even top tier games in this current financial climate. So let me know what you're seeing. Let me know what you're finding. Thank you for watching. If you're still here and you're still here with the video, thank you for staying tuned. I am the Y2K Collector. Hope you're having a great holiday week, and I will catch you in the next one. Take it easy.